Light, void, their apocalyptic brawl, a true Emerald Dream, the other side of Azeroth. That is what WoW's future looks like. Picking expansions is not as easy as it used to be back in the day when I started. We kind of ran out of pre-baked big bads from Warcraft 3. But finally, after the chaos of BFA and Shadowlands, Dragonflight is lifting the fog of war. We know Blizzard's vision for, well, the next few expansions. We know the biggest stories that will bring us into these new locales and continents. And we even know some of the villains we'll face along the way. Blizzard have been building an absolutely colossal story in the background, one that we've slowly been unearthing. At its core is Azeroth, a being of immense power with the fate of existence itself seemingly tied to her future. At the end is a threat so massive, it will take many expansions to truly figure out what is to come. Unlike this sponsor, which is us and our first game release, The Pale Beyond, which is a narrative survival role-playing game, very much inspired by the good old heroic age of Antarctic exploration. And man, it's been crazy. It's over a week since the game has came out. The response has been absolutely incredible from a critical standpoint from the users and the press, which has been so awesome to see. We did have a few launch quibbles. We're going to do a breakdown video on that, so don't worry. You know me, I can turn it into content, I'll make it interesting for you. But those things, the two most major issues are fixed, and the game's actually went well enough now that we're thinking about, well, what can we actually do next? So if you want to hop on the ride and enjoy a game experience that for a lot of people has been very worthwhile and affecting, then you can purchase The Pale Beyond with the link down below. Also, the second episode of our making of documentary is also out, and it really, man, it really is a good one. So that's the stuff. You can check out the game down below. The best way to help us is to pick up The Pale Beyond on Steam and leave an honest review. And if you want a little bit of bonus reading, I'm sure you'll enjoy the first two parts of our documentary as well. Light and void, the brawl to end all brawls, when the cosmos' two most antagonistic forces finally throw down. We've seen narrow, we've seen old gods, imagine when they clash. Velen has said that it is before Azeroth that the final battle will go down. And that means we'll be stuck in the middle of it. Hey, remember the Child of Shadow and Light prophecy with Illidan? Remember Velen's vision, where he saw this great war? All pretty damn cool lore from quite a few years ago now. But Cosmic War seems distant here on the Dragon Isles, doesn't it? We know that voidy shenanigans happened, of course, with Deathwing in the past, but right now, yeah, the Void doesn't have a major character in its corner. Except, as we've just learned, Ashara. She's likely coming back, and the last we saw, she said that she had left to find the true throne of Void. She said that she was tired of intermediaries and heralds, and she was away to find out what's really up. That happened at the end of BFA 2 expansions ago in the Nyalotha raid. But now, in patch 10.0.7, we've got Naga prophecies. And they're talking seemingly about their queen's return from beyond the Umbral Veil, whatever that might be. But it does sound to me like exactly where she last told us she would go, to the true throne of power. So if war comes to us, it may mean that instead of us going there, like with the Shadowlands, which was kind of lame, perhaps it will be brought to Azeroth. Big old invasion. That would be awesome. And who better to lead some void invasion than a power-hungry Queen Ashara, back doing her old tricksy business, trying to reclaim what was hers. This time, infused with power far beyond that of her old master. Then, of course, there's our old favorites, the Old Gods, who, even after their death, are hanging around like a bad stink. Their story in Dragonflight is subtle, painting a picture of a black empire that wasn't all bad. I mean, if it's the curse of flesh that gave us true free will, is it actually a curse or is it a gift? And after they're defeated, these old gods just return to their home plane of void, so Ashara may even return with a few of them on her leash. Or perhaps they see her as a bit of a danger, a bit of a risk. Maybe they're worried she'll throw things out of balance and try to resist her, or secretly plot to undo her, much in the same way that she secretly plotted to undo her old master, N'Zoth. This all could be quite cool. But then there's a few suspiciously neutral Void ethereals who, for no reason at all, have spies embedded in our society, watching the way that we fight and dress. And yes, this has been secretly teased for years in the Trial of Style and the Brawlers Guild. Then there's Ilaria and her Void Elves, who are, of course, our allies. Our point here is, our relationship with Void is messy. I mean, take Xalatath, right? We saved the world together, kinda twice. Then she noped out into the Void. Will she be on our side, or will she just pretend to be? Much applies, of course, to Void's natural opposite, the Light. The last arc that we saw, yes, had us fighting on the side of the Light, but we saw Xera's rather shocking turn on Illidan in Legion. She demanded obedience at the cost of free will, proving that the Light is only an ally when it actually suits it, much in the same way as we learned in Wrath of the Lich King that, yeah, your civilization might be cool, but if Algalon, or, if whatever the Titan facility sends the beacon, Algalon's going to come down and completely wipe the planet, showing that, yeah, even though we may be on the side of the Titans or whatever back then, they had no qualms with just wiping us clean because we'd be inconvenient. So, say the Light does turn up to bind us all. What would priests do? What would the Knights of the Silver Hand do? Would they fight an arrow? What about the Lightforged, who are now in the Alliance? Would they turn? Could be cool. Light does have one definitive antagonist, though, who has been, well, in an alternate universe, building a burning crusade, just that this time it's burning with the Light. This person is just one activation of the Dark Portal away from invading, and of course, you guessed it, it's Yrel. A returning favourite, but one that may have a twist. A twist showing that, yes, being too good can actually make you a bit evil. And if that seems weird to you, I'll just say this. I always loved this line from Galadriel in Lord of the Rings. Instead of a Dark Lord, you would have a queen. Not dark, but beautiful and terrible as the dawn, tempestuous as the sea, and stronger than the foundations of the earth. All shall love me and despair. Yeah, the Lady of Light in that case could go quite bad indeed. And to draw the two together, I think we could expect Anduin's eventual return. His goody two-shoes phase ended in Shadowlands. I mean, he even talked about how, while he was trapped inside his body, it was like, well, basically, I think he felt kinda Kino as fuck as he was going around being super powerful as a Death Knight. That was what scared Anduin. There was a little bit of him that was like, ooh, this is powerful. And of course, in the Shadows Rising novel, we see Anduin use a flicker of void at the end, which was specifically, dictated by Blizzard to the author so that, it will be teasing something, setting something up. So I think we can expect a returning Anduin who is, at the very least, more in touch with his darker side. So, what way is it shaping up then? Well, Xalatath called every war since the meddling of the Titans in Azeroth but a shadow of that ancient conflict. A war of infinite armies clashing in ceaseless battle, those are her words. Ashara will be on one side, a void-infused queen who wants to rule all and claim what she believes is her destiny. On the other side, Yrel and her fanatical crusade, trying to take Azeroth for her Naru masters. And as for us, we'll be stuck in the middle, trying to figure out what the hell we're going to do about it. It's hard to know, but I think you can almost see the logo now. World of Warcraft, Lightbound. Which is a bit funny considering Destiny 2, Lightfall just came out. And as for us, well, we'll be stuck in the middle, trying to figure out how we weather the storm. It'll be the peoples of Azeroth against the backdrop of all of this chaos. And I think at the core, the Alliance and the Horde just trying to survive and do right by their people. You might be wondering when. Well, the Naga prophecies that we find in 1007 make Ashara's return feel imminent. But you may think that to do this, I'll have to set the stage first. And with that, there's been a theory brewing. Something is building in the old world. There's an intentional campaign to slowly update assets from Kalimdor and the Eastern Kingdoms, right? Dragonflight is filled with traditional NPC and mob types, like furbolgs and gnolls. But we're also seeing some unused world assets lounging around in the game files, like taverns and burrows. So, many suspect that this points towards a world revamp being worked on behind the scenes. Consider everything we said about Light and Void, and then think about Turalyon, right? He worships the Light, he's married to a Void Elf, and he rules as the Lord Commander of the Alliance. That massive conflict of interest won't really make sense until we see the consequences of his leadership on Azeroth. But without some real world updates and things going on, I mean, if we didn't see them in-game, we wouldn't care. But thankfully, the ingredients are there. We've had a 5-year time skip that I think was an intentional move to push the story forward. We got to see that with the cleansing of the Undercity and the Elven leader's marriage. But it does get better, because in an interview they recently said that, as an example, if they were going to rebuild Gilneas, then it will happen in-game, not via time skip. That's a promise then, I think. The changes to Azeroth will be seen within Azeroth. You may, of course, think about Gilneas, you may think about continued things for the Undercity, and obviously, where the hell the elves are going to live. And broadly, there are 3 themes for a world revamp expansion. Back to basics, right? Go back and fill the world with interesting factions to interact with. Do what they've done with the Dragonflight renown, but wrote large on the world. Bring back guys like the Defias and the Scarlets, who, again, are actually showing up in the new lore. The Defias are mentioned in 1007 as a group that could actually join the Night Squall fleet, and that shows that the Defias still exist, and I'll touch on the fleet in a little bit. The Scarlets then reformed as the Scarlet Brotherhood, and when we last heard of them in BFA, they had a plan to restore the Menethil line via a secret heir to the throne. There is so much room to expand the lore and to give us new bad guys to fight that feel grounded. I mean, hell, expand the continents. There are still some unexplored parts of both continents, like Northern Lordaeron, the caverns under Stone Talon Mountains. Rebuild the Azeroth that we fell in love with those modern tools and modern art pipelines. The second theme then is a bit of tension. That's both internal and external. The Horde have a council, but they're still broken up from decades of wars against the Alliance. They deserve a few years of building and peace. But as for the Alliance, I mean, we are long overdue some tension. Tyrande may have been forced to deal with her rage in Shadowlands, but Teldrassil was a massive strategic and political failure for the Alliance. Then, of course, there's Anduin. When Anduin comes back, is Turalyon going to hand over power? Especially if Anduin has went through his own personal journey. And fresh of the memory of Death Knight Anduin. What if he returns mid-Light Invasion? I mean, Turalyon could easily question his competence after he just went and abandoned his post. Not that Gen or Shaw would necessarily allow that, but certainly room for tension. The third theme then is setting the stage for the future of Warcraft, and that would mean those big cosmic stories brought home. Every threat left in the cosmos will eventually march on Azeroth. That's the big point. But for that to feel right, we need a new, updated world for them to threaten. But there's one thing so fundamental to WoW that it's insane we haven't had an expansion yet. So let's talk about that. The promise of an Emerald Dream expansion has been in the community since day one. But according to Chris Metzen, it was always doomed to failure as an idea, because it would be boring to just have a lush forest expansion. But since Val'Shara, a new vision of the Emerald Dream has been forming. And since Shadowlands, it's actually becoming way bigger than anything we could have imagined back in 2005. Obviously, we can cast our mind back to Shadowlands, and we know that there's some life-ish place with a thing called Zereth Vitae at its core. Now, I wouldn't really like to go too much into that, because, let's be real, Shadowlands happened, and it all felt very alienating and weird. But one of the points here is that it doesn't have to be an endless lush forest anymore. It could have zones full of rapid evolution with lethal megafauna, realms of just crazy stuff, aspects of life that we haven't really thought about. We could go outside of the bounds of what the Titans carved out of it to create the thing that we know of as the Emerald Dream for Azeroth. There is actually a hell of a lot of potential, but both you and I know that any realm-hopping expansion is going to struggle with members of the public, me included, after the disastrous impact of the Shadowlands. Now, there are ways to make this cool, okay? I'll talk about those, but just before that, let's dip again back into the Emerald Dream, because it has been something that people have hyped up since I started playing the game. For a bit of drama, we know the Nathrezim have infiltrated life somehow via their spy document. There's a line that says, "Beware the eyes of green, the vassal of life disguises treachery." That's interesting. Odin also said life is chaos. Obviously, we know that order bound that chaos, turning, wild, natural nature into a pristine, controlled garden, which is not a natural thing. And the Emerald Dream means, of course, Ysera. It means Malfurion. It means Elune, all big characters people care about. We'll get to see where she hangs out or maybe is imprisoned. It could be literally on our moon. There could be moon-related stuff. If you think about the associations with Elune, that could be really cool. There's obviously the whole counterpart of the Winter Queen situation. If life ends in Ardenweald, could it begin with Elune? Could be quite cool. And that's only one small read. You can really see, though, the potential here and how it far exceeds the 2004 conception of an Emerald Dream expansion, which is the thing that just led to Chris Metzen saying, look guys, we know it would be cool, but you'd all be bored if we just shipped 5 zones of a big forest. There's also the likes of Tyronda's Seed, the future role of Ysera now that she's back, but is not the aspect of her flight. But again, after the Shadowlands, this would be a hard sell. So then, where in Azeroth could we go to land this Emerald Dream stuff? The other side of the goddamn planet, that's where. But it gets even better. This could also be a little bit of a South Seas-ish expansion, something people have wanted since vanilla. It isn't just a random uncharted bit of map. Now it's actually where the Night Squall is building a mega fleet to basically explore beyond the Forbidden and the Veiled Seas. This new lore was discovered in patch 10.0.7 in the Forbidden Reach, right? So the idea of the other side of Azeroth's been floating around for years. I mean, why does the sun go up on both the Eastern Kingdoms and Kalimdor if they're not on the same side of the planet? Doesn't make sense. Why is there an equator at the bottom of the continents? What else is out there, Blizz? But now it's more than just guesswork. We're actually getting real, tangible hints so loud they may as well be screaming. Night Squall's legend tells us of him, this legendary pirate, returning from the other side of Azeroth, laden down with treasures the likes of which we could never imagine. That tells us that there are unimaginable civilizations and things out there just waiting for exploration, and that really is the whole point. And if you say, as everybody in the comments does, why don't we see this from the sky? Why don't we fly over there in the Vindicar? Again, I would say, think about how powerful whatever there must be. Think about how the Dragon Isles were kind of hidden from us. Think about how Pandaria was, again, kind of hidden from us. If there's a 5th Old God over there, again, think about why it may have been hidden. It's really half the world to explore. Many people, races, with their own drives and ambitions, more than we know in Azeroth. It is the ultimate opportunity to create new lore that still feels Warcraft without having to have us disappear into space or some cosmic realm, which I think to a lot of players just feels like, oh, you've ran out of ideas, so you've just made a realm for us to go to. Now, we've only got the barest glimpse of what's out there, but it is key. A land named Avalorn, so powerful with its natives or the heretics that went there, that they could even destroy Odin's armies, back when he was essentially the boss of the planet. That's a lot of power. There may be an old god there, maybe a gateway to the Emerald Dream. We've in fact done a whole video on the possibilities of this, but whatever it is, it'll be nothing like we've seen before, but it will still be based in lore that we understand. Like how the Titan Keepers can sometimes be assholes, and that's something we've learned. But ultimately, the story at the back of Azeroth will be one about teamwork, I think. What we are getting from the Titans now is that they set up a whole bunch of lies back in the day that we just took for gospel truth. But now, though, it seems that Tyr had a big disagreement with his bosses, and Tyr ultimately is the Titan Keeper that seemed the most aligned with us, the one that was revered by, ancient humanity, right? And we're going to learn a lot about Tyr's disagreements through the story of Dragonflight. And I think when we do that, we're going to be able to recenter our worldview and know where we stand. And from that position, I think many expansion themes will seem a lot more reasonable. The ultimate stakes: Azeroth is a being of immense power, but she has been asleep at the core of our world since the beginning of creation. Tauren myth tells us that Azeroth sleeps because she is in ancient, terrible war with a power from outside the cosmos, or at least that's one heavily metaphorical read of that story. I know not everybody agrees with it, but hey, it's myths and folklore. I think it's fair game to think about what they may be, an analogy of. But something's out there to get us, something nasty. So the question is, will Azeroth ever wake up? If not, how do we defeat this looming threat? I think the answer is together, united. We cannot predict the names of future expansions, we cannot predict exactly what they're going to contain, but I think they will be moving us towards one story, which is that a cosmos divided will not stand.